Alrighty, hi, welcome to this week's episode. So this is actually two pieces, not just one. This is multiple pieces. So every year, well, more or less every year, I like to do annual redraws. So I'll take old pictures that I've done that I still like, but obviously at this point I know I can do better, so I just take the time to just not completely redo that. I tend to keep the same composition. I tend to keep the I might mess with the colors a little bit, but I try to keep them pretty similar. It's mostly just let's see what kind of growth I've had in the past however long since I've done this picture. So this is a set of two pictures. This first one that I'm working on is my character, Cael. I guess it's technically Caelum is his first name, but you know what? I was in high school, I hadn't ever heard Caelum said out loud, so his nickname is Cael. C-A-E-L. It works, it's whatever. But, so he is my character. He's another character who started out as a Kingdom Hearts OC. I made him so that I could draw spiky hair and just kind of do that. As you can see now, he doesn't have spiky hair anymore. He actually has soft curly hair now. You know, as characters do, they change. He actually hasn't had spiky hair for a long time. But he is a character that quickly became separate from the Kingdom Hearts universe, and got paired with Thysto's OC, Candide. So they ended up in the universe for our Utau, for our Mytholoids, our Utau, and for my story, Almost Alive, and for a lot of Thysto's stories. We have one big old universe that we're working on, and it's a doozy. There's a lot that needs to be... I think Thysto has told me there's a lot of like the magic system and stuff that's needs to be worked on a little bit more. Though for the time frame that Almost Alive and Aria Mytholoids happened, that's all modern day. That magic system is basically all worked out. But that's not the point of this. The point of this is to talk about Cael and Candide. They have their own little story. They do have, Cael is friends with Dem and the Aria Mytholoids at the beginning. And Candide goes to school with the protagonist of my story, Almost Alive. He goes to school with Hadex and their friends. So they're not necessary for the plots of either of those stories, but they are. Candide is necessary for the plot of Almost Alive, but he's like he's not a main character. He's a main side character. But they have their own story. It's called Rainy Days. It takes place, the beginning of it happens about halfway through the story of Almost Alive, which is, I think, a couple months after the start of Aria Mytholoids. So these stories all happen in the same city and happen concurrently, more or less. That's why I haven't worked on Rainy Days, even though I did start the comic a couple of times and have a good amount of it figured out, but because it takes place concurrently with Almost Alive, there are major spoilers for that story about halfway through Rainy Days. So I wanted to get Almost Alive basically written first, which I've been working on. Actually, I have about a chapter and a quarter written and the epilogue written, because I know how it ends already, although that might change as I'm writing it, who knows. But Candide and Cael, their story is pretty simple. It was originally a BL. I can't really label it that as such anymore, because I believe Candide is non-binary at this point, or gender fluid, one of the two. The Rainy Days will open with Candide's introduction is him talking to Haydek's Almost Alive's protagonist about pronouns and using different pronouns. So, you know, still kind of, it'll probably still be labeled as BL, but it's just an LGBT story. It is a soft and fluffy, it's just meant to be a soft and fluffy romance, slice of life kind of thing. So, you know, it's gonna be cute when I finally get around to telling that story as well. Now for Cael here, you'll notice that I did do, he's got his little, it's already, you know, obviously I'm working on the shadows now, so it's already pinned up from his shoes, but the bracelets he's wearing here are his and Candide's, what's the word, god tier classbacks. So he is Cael is a life player and Candide is a blood player. So I've got, you know, the wristband for Cael on his right arm, and the shoes and the belt all have the life colors, and then the blood colors on the two top wristbands on his left arm, the rainbow pride flag, because Cael is gay, and he identifies as such. He is 100% gay. And I don't actually remember why I did the pink and green. I think they are meant to stand for Dem and Dustin, who are Cael's, obviously Dem is from Aria Mytholoids, Dustin is another one of the side characters, who are actually Cael's best friends, more or less. They're a few years older than him, so it's a little, you know, sometimes you're friends with people that are older than you, but Cael is 19, and I think Dem is 26 at the beginning of Aria Mytholoids. They met through Cael's dad a long time ago, and they're just, well, I say met through Cael's dad, I mean, like, Cael went to go do something at Dustin's workplace, because his dad was there, and he met Dustin and Dem while he was there, and they ended up becoming friends, and they played D&D together. And Tony from Aria Mytholoids also ends up joining that circle of D&D. Candide ends up being the DM, I believe. So that's a lot of fun. But this is a piece that I originally did back, the first one, and I'll put all of the versions up at the end of the video. The first versions I did was all the way, I have the dates somewhere around here. I don't know where I put down my phone. There it is. Let me see, I can tell you the exact dates of the originals, or close to. I want to say the first version was in 2014. Way back when. So, you know, 6 years ago. Let me see. Yeah, 2014 was the first set that I did, and this was back when I hadn't just gotten my tablet. I'd had my tablet for a while, but this was my first year of college, and I did a lot more traditional work than digital work. My line weight, I did not know what line weight was when I did these originally. The anatomy's a mess, but you know what? That's the learning process. Second versions I did in 2017. And you know, the line works a little bit better. Obviously, the characters have grown. Poses still aren't great, but again, it's a learning curve. They're basically the same poses that I've done here, just I understand how bodies work now. And then the ones that I'm actually drawing on top of for these, that I used for my reference for these, were last July, so June, July 2019, because I have to do some sort of redraw annually, and this one is it. Although I guess I do a good amount of redraws. Honestly, I like doing them. I like seeing my art growth. I don't really see it unless I do redraws, which can be unfortunate. But you know, that's kind of how I get myself stuck out of ruts. Is I will go through my entire art Tumblr and just find old pieces that I knew I was really proud of when I first did them, and I will just completely redo them, whether that's completely reimagining them or just drawing on top of them and redlining them and what have you. You know, I'll do that, and it makes me feel a lot better to be able to visually see my progress, because obviously as you're growing, you don't see your progress as you are progressing. It's not until you look back at what you had done and where you started that you actually see your progress, and it helps me out a lot. It helps me from really getting burnt out, because not burnt out, but it stops me from getting like stuck in that rut of, oh, I'm not progressing, I'm not getting any better, I'm not doing anything different, like what have you. It makes me feel a lot better to see that progress and see it in real time. Well, let me talk about Candide and Cael again for a little bit, because I like them a lot, and I should, like all of my OCs, I should really talk about them more. Not that, well, Candide's not mine. Candide is Thysto's, but he's on loan. Candide is, so in the world of Rainy Days and Almost Alive, Aria Mythroloids and all that, the DTS verse, I think is what we're calling it for the moment, because the main story of that universe is, the acronym is DTS. But anyway, there is magic in this world. Magic and technology and stuff all coexist, though by the time Rainy Days and Almost Alive happens, that magic is, pretty not there. Let me see, I have a Word document on this. I should have brought it up first. By the time of Almost Alive and Aria Mythroloids, magic is not super common to like learn. If you don't inherently have it, then through your bloodlines of either being a magical creature or what have you, then you probably won't have it. You can learn it if you study really hard, but chances are you're not going to. Relatively common knowledge. People don't really believe in magic anymore, need to rely on magic so much anymore because of the existence of technology. Like, you know, obviously cell phones and cars, you don't need magic for transportation or for long distance messaging. We have electricity and ovens and all this stuff you don't need magic, like fire magic or anything like that for anymore. There are magical creatures that do exist in the Aria Mythroloids and Almost Alive in Rainy Days time period. It's not as common as back in the DTS time, which is, we haven't quite figured out that timeline, so don't ask me how long it's been. It's been millennia is the answer. This has been a very, like, stretched out, long over timelines thing. Most magical creatures at the point of Rainy Days don't really, they tend to stay away from human settlements and societies. Settlements, that's not the right word. They're big ol' cities. I guess settlement is still technically the right word, but it's not the right word because humans have long since they're here. Cael and Candide are both half elementals. Elementals in this world they're elementals. They're the elements formed into one concrete being. And for the most part, they stay away from humans. Because humans have a tendency to kind of mess with the elements a little bit more than they should, and the elementals don't like that because they are forces of nature. They can take mostly human shapes if they want to, but like a water elemental in their mostly human form will be still like dripping water, and still I think they'll be kind of a little bit more transparent through like their extremities where they can't hold the shape as well. If they go to cities and such, they are going to do so in their human form. They do not interact with humans in any other form than their more humanoid form. Some elementals do get curious about humans, or they do like humans. It's not common, but it happens. So like for Candide here, Candide is half water elemental, so he is able to control water to a degree. When he gets upset, he causes it to rain. Elementals, I don't know if this is a thing we're keeping, but I liked this way back when I first pitched this idea, so we'll see about this. But one of my original ideas for half elementals was that once a month they have to take a more elemental form. So for Candide, that would mean he basically plugs up his bathtub and just kind of water shifts for a day and just has to sit in his tub as just a big old puddle of water with Candide's consciousness just chilling out in there. So he's half water elemental. Jeez, I'm getting sleepy. And then Cael is half electricity elemental, so he can control electricity, he can produce electricity. He usually has some sort of static electricity clinging to him. That was one of the things actually that came from him having spiky hair. Was I kept joking that he looked like he stuck his finger in a light socket, cause his hair to all spray out, but he has more control over it than that because he's grown up this way. His dad is actually the elemental. His mom is human. His older sister is also half elemental, but she doesn't really use her elemental properties quite as much as Cael does. Cael controls electricity on a pretty daily basis. He uses it not to power his house, but just power like the small like toasters and stuff. What's the word? I don't know what the word is. And once a month he basically has to go out and ground himself, basically putting his hands to the earth and letting all of the built up electricity discharge into the ground. He can't, obviously, during that day he can't see Candide, he can't be around Candide because Candide is a water elemental and water conducts electricity, people. He is a little bit worried if he's close to Candide when this day comes around, he will kill him, which is a very fair thing to be worried about. I don't think there's much else I have to say on that subject. Their story is a story that I will tell at some point, but for now, enjoy the finished product. Sorry I didn't record doing the line art starting the coloring process for Candide, but sometimes you just forget to hit record. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the video. I will make sure to put up the originals, the originals, and then the other redraws, the other two redraws of them at the end. So yeah, so I'll talk to you all later. Bye.